And I've got to use other techniques. I've got to use video teleconferences. I've got to use chat. I've got to use email. I've got to use phone calls. I've got to use everything I can, not just for communication, but for leadership. A 22-year-old individual operating alone, thousands of miles from me, has got to communicate to me with confidence. I have to have trust in them and vice versa, and I also have to build their faith. And that's a new kind of leadership for me. We had one operation where we had to coordinate it from multiple locations. An emerging opportunity came, didn't have time to get everybody together. So we had to get complex intelligence together. We had to line up the ability to act. It was sensitive. We had to go up the chain of command, convince them that this was the right thing to do, and do all of this on electronic medium. We failed. The mission didn't work. And so now what we had to do is I had to do reach out to try to rebuild the trust of that force, rebuild their confidence, me in them and them in me, and our seniors in us as a force, all without the ability to put a hand on a shoulder. Entirely new requirement. Also, the people had changed. You probably think that the force that I led was all steely-eyed commandos with big knuckled fists carrying exotic weapons. In reality, much of the force I led looked exactly like you. It was men, women, young, old, not just from military, from different organizations, many of them detailed to us just on a handshake. And so instead of giving orders, you're now building consensus and you're building a sense of shared purpose. Probably the biggest change was understanding that the generational difference, the ages had changed so much. I went down to be with a Ranger platoon on an operation in Afghanistan. And on that operation, a sergeant in the platoon had lost about half his arm throwing a Taliban hand grenade back at the enemy after it had landed in his fire team. We talked about the operation, and then at the end I did what I often do with a force like that. I asked, where were you on 9/11? And one young Ranger in the back, his hair's tousled and his face is red and windblown from being in combat in the cold Afghan wind. He says, sir, I was in the 6th grade. And it reminded me that we're operating a force that must have shared purpose and shared consciousness, and yet he has different experiences, in many cases a different vocabulary, a completely different skill set in terms of digital media than I do and to many of the other senior leaders. And yet we need to have that shared sense. It also produced something which I call an inversion of expertise, because we had so many changes at the lower levels in technology and tactics and whatnot, that suddenly the things that we grew up doing wasn't what the force was doing anymore. So how does a leader stay credible and legitimate when they haven't done what the people you're leading are doing? And it's a brand new leadership challenge, and it forced me to become a lot more transparent, a lot more willing to listen, a lot more willing to be reverse mentored from lower. And yet, you're not all in one room. Then another thing, there's an effect on you and on your leaders. There's an impact. It's cumulative. You don't reset or recharge your battery every time. I stood in front of a screen one night in Iraq with one of my senior officers, and we watched a firefight from one of our forces. And I remembered his son was in our force. And I said, John, where's your son? And how is he? And he said, sir, he's fine, thanks for asking. I said, where is he now? And he pointed at the screen. He says, he's in that firefight. Think about watching your brother, father, daughter, son, wife in a firefight in real time, and you can't do anything about it. Think about knowing that over time. And it's a new cumulative pressure on leaders, and you have to watch and take care of each other. I probably learned the most about relationships. I learned that they are the sinew which hold the force together. Every morning, I grew up much of my career in the Ranger Regiment, and every morning in the Ranger Regiment, Every Ranger, and there are more than 2,000 of them, says a 6-stanza Ranger creed. You may know one line of it. It says, "I'll never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy." And it's not a mindless mantra, and it's not a poem. It's a promise. Every Ranger promises every other Ranger, no matter what happens, no matter what it costs me, if you need me, I'm coming. And every Ranger gets that same promise from every other Ranger. Think about it. It's extraordinarily powerful. It's probably more powerful than marriage vows. And they've lived up to it, which gives it special power. And so the organizational relationship that bonds them is just amazing. And I learned personal relationships were more important than ever. We were in a difficult operation in Afghanistan in 2007, and an old friend of mine that I had spent many years, various points in my career with, godfather to one of their kids, he sent me a note just in an envelope that had a quote from Sherman to Grant that said, "I knew if I ever got in a tight spot that you would come, if alive." And having that kind of relationship for me turned out to be critical at many points in my career, and I learned that you have to give that in this environment because it's tough. That was my journey. I hope it's not over. I came to believe that a leader isn't good because they're right. They're good because they're willing to learn and to trust. This isn't easy stuff. It's not like that electronic abs machine where 15 minutes a month you get washboard abs. And it isn't always fair. You can get knocked down, and it hurts. And it leaves scars. But if you're a leader, the people you've counted on will help you up. And if you're a leader, the people who count on you need you on your feet. Thank you.